One of the greatest mysteries of Stonehenge has finally been solved. For centuries, scientists have puzzled over this megalithic structure, and now an answer has finally been found that ends an age-old debate.
And the results, I can already tell you, are absolutely astonishing. Stay tuned to find out what the scientists discovered and why it's such a sensation. A warm welcome, everyone.
Stonehenge is one of the most impressive monuments in human history. Around 5,000 years ago, people in southern England erected massive stone blocks, some of which weigh up to 25 tons. The big question that has puzzled archaeologists for over a century is how and why our ancestors brought these giant stones there. Feel free to write to me if any of you have been to England and visited Stonehenge. If you don't want to miss any more scientific discoveries, then subscribe to the channel now. Subscribing is free, you'll never miss a video again, and you'll be helping me out a lot.
And if you've already subscribed, giving the video a thumbs up really helps. 5,000 likes is the magic threshold for the YouTube algorithm. Thanks everyone! Alright, now let's head to England. Stonehenge is made up of different types of stones.
The largest are the so-called sarsen stones, which come from the surrounding area. Then there are the blue stones, which come from Wales, about 230 kilometers away. And finally, there is the altar stone, a 6-ton sandstone block. This altar stone is particularly mysterious because researchers only discovered in 2024 that it comes from Scotland, over 700 kilometers away from Stonehenge.
That raises the question, how did this stone get there? UPS didn't exist 5,000 years ago, and transporting 6 tons from Scotland to southern England sounds pretty difficult to me. Two theories were in opposition. The first theory states that people in the Neolithic period transported the stones with incredible effort, perhaps using tree trunks or rafts. At first glance, the second theory sounds more plausible. Glaciers would have pushed the stones south during the Ice Age and left them in southern England as so-called glacial erratics. Our Stone Age ancestors would then have simply found the stones and used them on the spot. You know how it is. You wake up in the morning, want to build a ritual altar, and a melted glacier has left a multi-ton stone right outside your door. Always handy.
This glacier theory certainly had its supporters. After all, there were several ice ages during the Pleistocene, and glaciers are capable of transporting massive boulders over hundreds of kilometers. This would also explain why stones from different regions, such as Wales and Scotland, ended up on Salisbury Plain of all places. But is this really true? A team of researchers at Curtin University in Australia asked themselves this very question and came up with a brilliant idea to answer it. If glaciers had really transported massive rocks from Scotland or Wales to southern England, they would have left a clear mineralogical trail. Dr. Anthony Clark, the lead author of the study, explains it this way. If glaciers had carried rocks all the way from Scotland or Wales to Stonehenge, they would have left a clear mineralogical signature on Salisbury Plain. These rocks would have eroded over time, releasing tiny grains that we could date to understand their age and origin. So the researchers set out to investigate. They collected samples from rivers around Stonehenge and analyzed the mineral grains they contained. Zircon crystals were particularly interesting. Zircon is one of the most resistant materials on Earth and can remain intact for millions of years. These crystals are like tiny geological time capsules that tell us where the rock came from and how old it is. The scientists used a special technique to examine the mineral grains. In the modern laboratories at Curtin University, they carried out precise measurements and analyzed the age of the zircon crystals. What they found was astonishing. They found zircon crystals in the river sands around Stonehenge that are between 3.4 and 285 million years old. This age fits perfectly with rocks from northern Great Britain, more specifically the so-called Laurentian crust. But, and this is the key point, these crystals did not originate from direct glacial transport, but were distributed over long periods of time through natural erosion and sediment redistribution. Dr. Clark summarizes the findings. We searched the river sands near Stonehenge for grains that glaciers might have transported, and we found none. This makes the alternative explanation that humans moved the stones far more plausible.
And that's just crazy, isn't it? Someone actually went to the trouble back then to transport these stones.
The study clearly shows that the mineralogical composition of the sediments around Stonehenge is not compatible with the glacier hypothesis. If huge ice streams had actually pushed boulders from Scotland or Wales to southern England, then a characteristic trace of zircon crystals around 464 million years old would have to be found there. This is exactly the age of the bluestone rocks from Wales. However, out of 550 zircon grains analyzed, the researchers found only one grain of this age. Just one. Statistically speaking, this is negligible and definitely does not indicate massive glacial transport. Instead, the data show that the mineral grains originate from locally relocated sediments, mainly from the Thanet Formation, an early Paleocene rock layer in the London Basin. These sediments were repeatedly redistributed over millions of years, but not by glaciers. What does this mean in concrete terms? It means that our Stone Age ancestors must have actually transported these enormous loads over hundreds of kilometers. How exactly they did this remains a mystery. Some people say the stones could have been sailed down from Scotland or Wales, or they could have been transported overland on rolling logs. But we may never know for sure, says Dr. Clark. What we do know is that ice almost certainly did not move the stones. Who knows what technologies people had back then? I feel like watching a bit of the Flintstones again, but joking aside, this is an absolutely amazing achievement. Imagine having to transport a 6-ton stone over 700 kilometers without modern technology. No cranes, no trucks, no roads in the modern sense, just muscle power, ropes, maybe rafts, and a lot of perseverance. The people of the early Stone Age must have had incredible motivation to take on this challenge. Professor Chris Kirkland, co-author of the study, emphasizes the significance of this discovery. Stonehenge never ceases to surprise us. By analyzing minerals smaller than a grain of sand, we were able to test theories that have been around for over a century. The new findings also shed light on other questions surrounding Stonehenge. If the stones were not transported by glaciers, then someone deliberately selected rocks from very specific, distant regions. This suggests that these places had special significance for the builders. Perhaps the stones' places of origin were sacred sites or had spiritual significance. In any case, the effort that went into obtaining these specific stones clearly shows that Stonehenge was more than just a practical structure. Professor Kirkland also points out that many questions remain unanswered. There are so many questions that can be asked about this iconic monument, such as why Stonehenge was built in the first place. He explains that the site probably had several purposes, as a temple, a calendar, perhaps even a gathering place for celebrations. Asking and answering such questions requires different data sets, and this study adds an important piece to the bigger picture.
I think this discovery also teaches us humility in the face of our ancestors' achievements. Without machines, without modern physics or engineering, people in the Stone Age created monumental structures that have endured to this day. And that shows what human ingenuity and willpower are capable of.
Stonehenge will continue to occupy us. Every new investigation brings new insights, but also new questions. If you don't want to miss anything in the future, subscribe to the channel now and remember to give it a thumbs up for 5,000 likes. And speaking of moving rocks, be sure to stay tuned for my next video, which is about what is probably the most famous supervolcano on Earth. A huge area in Yellowstone National Park has begun to rise. Scientists haven't seen this kind of uplift in decades. Are we now facing the eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano? Find out what the latest measurements show and whether we need to worry in the video above on the right. It's very exciting. As always, there's another video about science and space below on the right. Otherwise, I'd say see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.